Here's diary entry number 4. This has been day 1 of classes. A bit rusty, but getting there, and gave an overview of the course and thought I'd give you a brief window into this. Bear in mind that this is a Christian university, and so the course is spoken from a Christian perspective, integrating into the history and philosophy of science. So this might not be the kind of overview of science that some people who aren't Christians would expect, but hopefully this covers or at least the course will cover the interactions between theology, philosophy, and science, again, from a biblical perspective. So this is the diary course, which I've been showing the students. And at the beginning, we'll do week 1, weeks 2 and 3. What is science? I can't talk today. And then week 4, we'll be focusing from Adam all the way to the medieval period, which is from the beginning. Look at that little helpfully ambiguous beginning there, all the way to the 500s to 1400s AD. Then looking at the scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, revolutions in biology and physics, all the way to modern science, which take us through week 5 to week 9. Week 8 has an interlude, which is how does science progress? This is basically a lens. So what the students are getting is a lens that equips them to look at the history of science. And that lens is looking at scientific reasoning. How do scientists think? And how do scientists explain things? With that understanding, they should then hopefully be able to think about how science works in each of these periods. Whereas this lens, which comes at the end of the course, asks, what makes for good scientific progress, and has science progressed? Like, obviously in some ways it has progressed, but in what ways has it progressed? And this lens comes at the end of the course so that we can look again back on the history that we've seen and ask how much and in what ways science has progressed, and in what ways, perhaps with respect to certain ethical things. You can think about atomic physics and some of the negative ethical implications of that. You can think about ways in which there haven't been progress, and so that's quite a helpful way of looking at that. And then at each point in history, we'll be looking at some main themes. So here we'll be looking at old sciences like modern science. In the old days, they didn't call it science. That comes in the 1800s. But nevertheless, it just helps to call it old science for the sake of making it more slick. And the reason I'm emphasizing this is because a lot of people emphasize the difference between older versions of science and modern science, and yet there are very striking similarities, so that's why we're looking at that. Then we have modern science is still unique, impressive, and different, and so we'll be looking at the fact that modern science does still contrast what came before, and we'll look at ways in which it's done that. Then week 6, we'll look at the Enlightenment, which was so impressed by modern science that it elevated it above all other authorities and elevated human reason above all other authorities. But this led to a massive amount of skepticism, since when you're skeptical of all authorities, you then end up losing a basis for understanding whether human reason has a good foundation, because you end up even distrusting reason and your own senses and the authority of your senses and things like that. And so the Enlightenment weirdly exposes how modern science is limited, because there was a lot of skepticism in the Enlightenment from Hume and Kant and stuff. And ironically, I think it shows that we need revelation from God, therefore, since if human reason is limited, then how can we know what is true? What hope do we have in that context? And that is the implication I think the Enlightenment has. Then we'll look at Darwin and Einstein and covering revolutions in biology and physics, and also quantum physics. And we'll be kind of exploring the question of how does science and faith fit? What are the options there? How do we understand these things? And then skipping to last week, we'll look at how modern philosophers and scientists, the kind of questions that they ask about science. And then you don't need to care about this, but the students have a little assignment, and this helps them understand when to think about going on to the next stage in their assignment. That's a little introduction into how the course is going to be broken down. And also you have this diagram, or this little bit of the diagram I didn't explain here, which says God speaks into all of it. And that is to highlight the fact that we'll be considering how passages from the Bible interact with each of these topics, and whether they can speak into and address each of these topics in ways that are helpful and productive and fruitful. So that's it. That is the summary I've been giving them, and now you have it too, for what that's worth. Hope you have a good day, whoever you are, and goodbye.